30 sayings of the wise from Proverbs chapter 20, we'll be in chapter 24 today. We explained again that the wisdom is the skill to live life according to God's plan. So wisdom isn't just a knowledge thing, it's a skill to put into practice. It's a skill to live life according to God's plan. And I want to remind you again, the sayings that we find in the book of Proverbs as we go through these are generalizations about what is true most of the time. And they're not promises that this will always happen. But for the most part, if you do these things, the blessings will come. And so these work in most circumstances. The writer started the sayings back in chapter 22, verse 17, saying, "Pay attention. Turn your ear to the sayings of the wise. Apply to your heart what I teach. For it's pleasing when you keep them in your heart and have them ready on your lips. So that you may trust, so that your trust may be in the Lord, I teach you today, even you. Have I not written 30 sayings for you? Sayings of counsel and knowledge, teaching you to be honest and to speak truth, so that you will bring back truthful reports to those you serve." And so we've looked at several of these sayings already. We're ready for the 20th saying, which starts at the beginning of chapter 24, verse 1. So we're going to go about 6 of these today. It says, "Do not envy the wicked. Do not desire their company. For their hearts plot violence, and their lips talk about making trouble." It says we shouldn't envy the wicked. This warning is given 3 times in the 30 sayings. Don't envy the wicked. The first couple of times, the reason for not envying the wicked is because they don't have a future. Their future is bleak. We have a hope for the future, and they don't. But here the reason is because they plan violence. When they talk about the trouble they'll bring on others. So often, we look at people or characters in movies and we think, man, I wish I could get away with that. That's what I'd like to do to the people that irritate me. Well, that's things that I'd like to do at school or at work. Or we know people who are really popular even though they have a bit of a reputation. And we think, man, we'd like to hang out with them because they're popular. Everybody likes them. I want to be liked, so I want to know what they're doing. A lot of times girls get accused of liking the bad boys. And I suppose guys get accused of liking the naughty girls. Why do we like that? I mean, it sounds fun for a moment, but if we stop and think about it, the future there isn't real promising. Because if I was really with a bad boy or a naughty girl, then after the initial fun was over, I got to put up with a bad boy. You know what I'm saying? We think in the moment, oh, this will be fun for now, but we forget that the long term of that is there's repercussions for that. I got to put up with this. Hanging out with the wicked will probably make you the victim of their plotting. Sometimes they might turn on you. Or you'll become an accomplice to their activity. I didn't do that, Dad. I was not involved. That was just them. Well, you were hanging out with them, and so now you get associated with them and what they were doing. But at the very least, it's going to give you a reputation as a troublemaker. And that's not the life that we should probably be aspiring to. Now, we've talked about our need to spend time with those who don't know Christ. So the idea isn't necessarily to avoid them altogether. But don't envy their life. Don't glamorize their actions that this would be a great thing for me. Don't desire or want to spend a lot of time with that kind of people because that's the kind of reputation I want to have. Be careful about who we hang out with. Don't envy the wicked. Rather, we should probably seeking a life that's pleasing to God. 21st saying, starting verse 3. "By wisdom a house is built. Through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures." The idea here is that folly and sin do not contribute to security and prosperity. But wisdom does. A wise person is able to provide for their family, to take care of them. A foolish person might squander their energy and their resources on other things, and so their family has to make do with what's left over. So if I want to spend all my time and all my money on hobbies, or some vice, gambling, alcohol, whatever it is you've got, and then I can't afford to provide for my family, I can't provide them with a proper house or proper clothing or food, my family ends up paying the price for my selfishness. If my hobbies and my vices become a hindrance to my ability to provide for my family, that's a sign of foolishness. I'm not saying all hobbies are bad. Providing for your family is more important. provide for your family and still do those things, fine. But don't make your family pay the price for your other pursuits. All right, verse 5, 22nd saying. The wise prevail through great power, and those who have knowledge muster their strength. Surely you need guidance to wage war, and victory is won through many advisors. A wise person is not self-reliant. He looks to others for counsel. The example here was to win a battle. We have this attitude of independence. My father instilled that in me. Your parents may have instilled that in you. We think we can do everything ourselves. We don't need anyone to help us. And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to be self-reliant and independent. But when it keeps us from seeking advice from others, or getting suggestions and recommendations from others, then we're not living up to our full potential. When we refuse to accept help from other people, we limit our ability to succeed. So don't be afraid to ask for help or ask for advice, especially in the church where a lot of us, at least, have a desire to help others. And we're like, well, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And we realize as we say that the odds are very slim that you'll ever let us know. So part of it is to make us look good. If you need anything, I know you won't, then let me know. Don't offer that unless you're willing to follow it up. But at the same time, when somebody offers to help you, don't get this whole attitude of, well, I don't want to put them off or put them out or make the trouble for them. They offered to help. They might want to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help. For me, it's frustrating to find out someone didn't come to something because they didn't have a ride. They couldn't get there. The weather was too bad. And I said, well, I didn't come and got you. Well, I didn't want to put you out that way. But I want to come get you. We'd like you to be there. Or you find out that something's broken in their home, the fan's not working, the furnace isn't working. Well, why didn't you say something? Well, I didn't want to bother anybody with it. Or they go out and do something that's wrong, and we could have told them it was wrong because we've done it, and it was wrong. But they don't ask, and we don't offer. A wise person prevails through great power. They muster their strength, even if that strength comes from other people around them. Surely you need guidance to wage war. So be wise. Ask for help, and let other people help you. Ask for advice. Let other people give you good advice. All right, verse 7, 23rd, saying, wisdom is too high for fools. In the assembly at the gate, they must not open their mouths. All right, I just said you should ask for advice. Sometimes we offer advice, and we probably don't have any good advice to offer. We need to be willing to ask for help, but perhaps it's also true that we need to be selective about the advice that we give, because sometimes the advice that we give is simply based on ignorance. You know how people without kids give you advice on parenting? Because it's so easy until you have kids. Or the guy's been bankrupt 3 times and wants to give you financial advice. There are times where our advice probably isn't great for the person we're trying to advise. There are times when we really don't know what we're talking about. But everybody has an opinion. And we feel like we need to share it. Shared in the Sunday school class today. I like to read some of the news articles that pop up on Yahoo on the front page when I turn on the computer. But after the news article, they always have a response. You can read everybody's response to it. And I quit reading those because they irritate me, because people are just stupid. Because they jump to conclusions and they tell you, oh, this is what should be. And they don't even know what's true, because the article even said, well, this has been accused, but we're not sure yet. And they, well, that guy did it. I know he did it. How do you know? Well, I've got an opinion. Well, that's not the same thing as evidence that he actually did it. Everybody's got opinions, and sometimes our opinions aren't worth sharing. And as I read some of those opinions, I would suggest that 99.8% of them aren't worth sharing. The assembly at the gate that it talks about here in Proverbs is where their legal and judicial decisions were made. Basically, the assembly at the gate was their court system. So a fool who really can't comprehend or appreciate fairness probably shouldn't be in the court trying to spout their opinion. They should just keep their mouths shut. Some of us who like to give a lot of bad advice should probably consider whether or not our advice is worth hearing before we give it. If it's a subject you don't know a lot about, then it really doesn't matter how strong your opinion is about it. Leave it to the experts. Leave it to somebody who knows what they're talking about. I like to play with cars, so people come to me and ask me what's wrong with their car. And I'll give you some opinions, but you probably ought to take them to a mechanic. I mean, I've had people come to me and say, you know, my radiator's overheating, what is it? And I say, oh man, this is bad, and that's bad, and your thermostat's bad. Well, what had happened is their kids had sprayed some stuff on the radiator, and it was burning off. The thermostat was fine. The radiator was fine. It was just burning off this stuff. All right? I'm not a mechanic. Go to a mechanic. If you need financial advice, go to somebody who knows finances. If you need parenting advice, go to a parent who knows what they're doing and has some kids that you're like, I wish my kids were like that. So who you ask for advice is important, but for those of us that are giving it, it's important that we know what we're talking about. Abraham Lincoln is credited with saying, better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. A lot of us do a lot more speaking than we need to. So be careful when you give advice and you know what you're talking about. 24th saying, verse 8. Whoever plots evil will be known as a schemer. The schemes of folly are sin, and people detest a mocker. So a person who continually comes up with thoughts of how to manipulate other people, it could be practical jokes, and I'm not saying those are all bad, but sometimes we take it a little too far. Or it could be pyramid schemes or Ponzi schemes or whatever to try to take advantage of people. But those people are schemers, obviously, and such scheming is foolish because, well, first of all, it could be sinful. And second of all, it makes mockery of the people you're trying to manipulate. And people don't like being tricked or manipulated. Again, Abraham Lincoln is attributed with saying, you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. When you get found out, it ruins your reputation, because people now don't trust you for anything. Once people figure out that you're trying to fool them, they'll stop trusting you, and they will, the word they used was detest your company. Because people detest a mocker. So if you're that person, you need to be very careful about who you're manipulating. The last one we'll look at today, verse 10. If you falter in a time of trouble, how small is your strength? Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering towards slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay everyone according to what they've done? We see people in trouble all the time. But we try to turn a blind eye to it most of the time because we just don't feel like we can fix it. What can I do about all the starving people in Ethiopia? What can I do about all the homeless people in Indianapolis? And so we think, well, I can't help everybody, so I'm just not going to worry about it. Sometimes we plead ignorance. Well, I didn't know they needed help. Well, it's because you didn't ask. Because you didn't get to know them. Well, if I'd have gotten to know them and asked, then I might have found out they needed it, and then I'd have to help meet that need. I didn't want to help meet that need, so I just remained ignorant and didn't have to do anything. We can claim ignorance all we want, but God knows the heart. And He knows whether we're really ignorant or whether we're just covering our eyes and covering our ears and trying to pretend it didn't happen. It says that He will judge or repay it. He knows and considers people's inner motives and thoughts. He's concerned about the plight of the poor and the helpless. So what are you concerned about? You know the story Jesus told himself. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him. And he'll separate the people one from another as a shepherd would separate the sheep from the goats. And he'll put the sheep on his right, the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, you looked after me. I was in prison, you came and visited me. And the righteous will answer him, oh, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And then he'll say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger and you didn't invite me in. I needed clothes and you didn't clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you didn't look after me. And they will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? And he'll reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. And then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Do we turn a blind eye to the needs of others? Do we ignore the fact that people need help because we don't want to have to help them? We recently did a series of sermons about living life on mission. And in a few weeks, I'm going to give you a few more opportunities to serve. I'm going to ask you to commit to some kind of ministry to serve others. So you can sit there and tell me you don't know anybody all you want. I'll introduce you. But maybe you already know them. Are you using the resources that God has given you to help others that are in need? To rescue the perishing from the fate that is awaiting them? Or are you just blowing it off and say, well, I didn't know? Who is it that we can help? Who is it that we can rescue? Let's pray. Father, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I realize this goes all kinds of directions, and it's almost hard to keep track of the different directions all these proverbs go. But we're reminded again that you loved us enough to send your Son to die for us, and that you put your Spirit within us, and that you fill us with your love so much that it overflows. So would you love others through us? What if that looks like? May we not be people that take advantage of others because we love them. Maybe we be careful that the reputation that we seek, that we're not envying the wicked because we love you. Father, when we see people who are in need, who are being made fun of and put down, who are suffering injustices in this world, would you help us to do something about it? Not to ignore it or act like we don't know, but think about what we can offer. Father, I'm overwhelmed with all of the injustices in the world. And I recognize I can't help everyone. But I know people I stand up for those who are being persecuted. I guess, would you help us to be your body? To act in this world the way that you would act if you were here in the flesh, because we are your body. With Christ as our head, may we go out and serve others in your name. Pray in Christ's name.